It all happened so suddenly. People begged, screamed, asked her to kill this wyvern. Only she could do it, the holy swordswoman. When the magical animal was ready to attack with fire, all the people, screaming and yelling, rushed to run in all directions. But the girl stood motionless, as if she was used to this matter. Now everything was clear. The magical monster was killed, and the girl stood calmly on his head. She remembered everything, how she lived in her past life and how she died. And as for this world, this is the world of the book The Legendary Sword, which she read with rapture in her past life. And she is the strongest swordsman in this book, one of the 4 great masters, and she lives here, reincarnated as Astria. The holy swordswoman has changed lately. Before, if you asked for help, she would immediately respond, but now she pretends not to hear. They say she even charges for her services, and before, even if they offered payment, she flatly refused, but now she herself hints that she wants money. The girl thought that this was natural, because she was no longer the simpleton Rhea that she had been before. Saint Swordswoman Astria, because she selflessly helped others for a greater cause, she was also called the humble Saint Swordswoman. As soon as someone called for help, she immediately rushed there, devoting herself entirely to helping others. However, now that her memories of her past life have returned, she no longer wants to do that, because her past life was not particularly joyful either. At that time she had no money, so she had to live in poverty. But she does not intend to continue like this in this life. The woman, a little frightened, asked if she had finally arrived. When asked if the swordswoman would be having dinner, she replied that she might not cook today. The dissonance and devastation of living 2 lives is simply overwhelming. The girl tried to drown out these feelings with shopping, but eventually this too starts to get boring. The girl didn't know why these memories suddenly surfaced, but the memories of that time are so vivid, as if it were yesterday, and sometimes they plunge the girl into despondency. However, Mom remained unharmed. For her, who had already surpassed the limits of the human body, time and money were in abundance. And she decided to just rest for now. She wanted to go on a hike to completely unwind and relax. That's what she was going to do, but some man was yelling at the poor boy that he was a mudblood, that he was going to be executed in the village, so let him follow them without resistance. Rhea wondered why she couldn't just walk past, but she seemed to have taken her sword with her, but had no plans to draw it from its sheath. The boy bit the man, causing him to scream. He was already swinging to hit the boy. Memories of her past life came back to haunt her, and something in the girl's heart began to ache. She quickly almost flew up to the man and grabbed his hand, which he was about to hit the child with. She had already saved the villains by mistake once, so she tried not to interfere anymore, but it seems that this rule does not apply to them. The man, rubbing his hand, yelled who she was and let her say her name, otherwise he and his friends would attack. The girl said sarcastically that they didn't even give her a chance to introduce herself. But she can't kill them, so she won't draw her sword. A moment later, the villains were already lying defeated on the cold ground. The boy looked at his savior with a mesmerized gaze. In his eyes, she was incomparably beautiful, and her struggle simply incredible. But the man wasn't going to let the boy go just like that. He reached for him, groaning that he was a damn kid. The girl thought that he was more stubborn than she thought, and maybe she should just kill him. But suddenly his words towards the boy made her freeze. He called him the seed of evil. There's something she didn't mention. She's not actually the main character of this book. She's more of a mentor who has to teach the real main villain how to use the sword. The one who gives him a reason to swear revenge on the evil god. In a word, she is just a secondary character who appears and disappears. And the one who killed her is the reincarnation of the evil god, who in the past was called the seed of evil. And this sweet boy is the very reincarnation of the seed of pure evil. And in the future, it will be he who kills her. In the universe of the legendary sword, there are 2 gods because the original god who created this world created 2 beings endowed with the power of yin and yang to rule it. The good god of the light principle, Shiner, and the evil god of the dark principle, Cassian. But one day the evil god upset this balance. After many days of fierce battle, the evil god was victorious and the good god fell. And as the sun began to fade from the world, giving way to eternal night, hope was born, like a firefly. It was the seed of hope that the good God sowed in the human world before his death. The first holy king Azazel and the 4 heroes, in other words, the distant predecessors of Rhea. By joining forces, they managed to defeat the evil god. But they missed one important fact, that the evil god, repeating the cycle of samsara, will be reborn again. and this boy is the reincarnation of that very evil god. But the girl needed proof. The man replied that the rascal had attacked his adoptive father, who had raised him and had run away. Just a few years will pass and he will definitely become a great evil. But Rhea wasn't interested. She asked if he had seen that very sign. But the man couldn't answer, so the girl came to the conclusion that he was trying to execute him without any evidence. She doesn't think the church would pay a reward for that. The first Holy King Azazel left a prophecy that the reincarnation of the evil god, born in the year 658 of the Kanai calendar, would bring destruction to the world. Because of this, children born during this period were often hunted as witches without any reason. The girl did not understand what these children were guilty of, because they could not even imagine in their dreams that they were born an evil god. She squatted down and addressed the boy. Smiling sweetly so as not to scare him, she introduced herself as the holy swordswoman Astria and asked his name. But the boy did not appreciate the polite gesture and hissed, "Why did she need his name?" He looked like a wild cat who did nothing but hiss at everyone. After a pause, he replied that his name was Sigrian. He no longer hissed but held on firmly. Suddenly, Rhea, apologizing, hugged him, explaining that she really needed to look at his back. In fact, it is difficult for ordinary people to find evidence of the presence of the evil god because he is too cunning and skillfully hid his tracks. But she is a different matter, a new ability that the girl acquired, having overcome the limits, the eye of the mind. It allows her to see the essence of everything in the world, as well as the signs of an evil god. This can't be. The boy really is the seed of evil. The woman was very surprised. No one could ever have imagined that Rhea would have a child. She, of course, said that she would not have dinner, but could the woman cook something for the boy? It seemed like he hadn't eaten anything for a very long time, because the pies simply evaporated. She brought him here on impulse. But what should she do with him now, and what should she do in this situation? The end of the original legendary sword is like this. Half the world was destroyed, and the protagonist and Sigrian died, destroying each other. He can't just sit back and watch it come to this. This is the world she spent so long protecting. She has been living, protecting this world for 100 years, and she fought until exhaustion. She lost people dear to her. Currently, the evil god's power is sealed. There are 2 ways to prevent it from waking up. Clear his internal kuai or kill him before it's too late. But the boy interrupted the girl's thoughts, timidly touching her hand. He decided to explain himself. He attacked his adoptive father because he beat him every day. The boy promised that this would not happen again, added that he would do everything she said, and begged her to take him with her. At that moment, memories from her past life came flooding back into the girl's head. She cried and asked her mother to stay with her and not leave. The boy sat on the floor in front of the fireplace, warming himself and finally eating his fill. Rhea addressed the boy by name, to which he seemed frightened. He looked at her with frightened eyes. The girl looked at him with a terribly cold gaze and asked if he would really do everything she said. Sigrian looked at her for several long seconds with eyes full of either charm, admiration, or pleading. Finally, he answered in a firm voice with one single word, "Yes." The girl thought that perhaps in the original story, he was swallowed by an evil god because there was no one who could protect him. She wanted to hug him, to which the boy was indignant. After all, he was not a child. From now on, Rhea will raise him so that he does not go astray, and so that he could live among people. Sigrian woke up in the middle of the night. He was finally sleeping in a warm bed, but sleep still left him. The damn boy finally fell asleep. Even though he was just a part of it, the evil god's reputation was in ruins. During the day, it is the time of the good god Shiner, so he cannot manifest himself, which is very annoying. The one who was now in the boy's body looked at Rhea. The holy swordswoman was lying and sleeping next to him. She was so annoying. He thought maybe he should kill her, but suddenly she got up from the bed. Maybe she felt his energy. She needed to quickly pretend to be this boy. The girl, as if not yet awake, asked why the boy was not sleeping. He couldn't understand what was happening now. It turns out that Rhea is just talking in her sleep, and he thought that he was exposed. However, even if she finds out who she is, she can't do anything. You still need to be careful. Now he has only recovered 1/10 of his strength, and even this little he suppresses so that Shiner does not notice. Rhea whined in her sleep like a wounded puppy. "Don't go." She even opened her eyes, but it was as if she was still asleep. The girl asked not to leave and to stay with her a little longer. She was scared. The boy, or whoever now possessed his body, finally realized what was going on. The soul of the holy swordswoman has become so weakened that she is tormented by demons. The source of life force is ether. It gives life force to all living things, but there is also black ether, the source of evil. The source of his power is the ominous, dark aura emanating from the holy swordswoman. She is simply the perfect victim, prepared just for him. A seemingly very fragile boy, even a child, with just one wave of his hand forced the terrible demons and succubi to recoil, covering their faces with their paws. This girl was a great source to bring back his power. He was confident that he would use her and her energy to the fullest. And as soon as he regains all the power that rightfully belonged to him, he will kill the holy swordswoman. But the sun rose and the time of the good God came. The boy's body fell backwards onto the bed next to the girl, and he fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. When he woke up, Sigrian was confused. He seemed unable to understand where he was or what was happening. The boy could not understand why he slept next to Rhea, because last night he definitely did not fall asleep with her and not in her bed. Suddenly, he was thrown onto the bed, knocked off balance. Sigrian screamed like a wild animal, asking why he should sleep with her. To which Rhea replied with a laugh that just look at this boy. She is already 100 years old, and she, being older, has to sleep on the floor because of him, and she is not happy with that either. At his age, he needs to sleep in a good bed, eat nutritious food, and grow well. And she will give him all this and even more. The boy looked at her with eyes full of inspiration and surprise. No one had ever treated him like this before. He had never received as much affection and care as he had received in the last hours spent next to the girl. But suddenly he said something to which the girl could not react calmly. Sigrian admitted that he was actually 12 years old. Rhea thought he was 10, and when she heard this news, she began to count. Now it is the year 670th, and the time of the prophecy is the year 658th. It's true, but he's still a baby. These words pierced the boy's heart and pride like an arrow. He's 12 years old and doesn't know table etiquette, how to behave or how to respect his elders. He'll have to be taught a lot. This won't do, let him lie down quickly, otherwise he will never grow up. The girl will see that he will definitely become taller and stronger than her. He will become a truly cool man, but she should not dare to fall in love, to which the girl replied that it is better for young men to be tall, rich, and handsome, and now he should go to bed. But the boy was overcome by a wave of shame that came over him like a tsunami. He couldn't believe that he actually ended up falling asleep with her on the bed. But the girl's loud yawn made the boy flinch. She yawned and mumbled that she hadn't slept like this for a long time, and Sigrian sat and couldn't turn over. For some reason, he couldn't look the girl in the eyes. But suddenly, in a slightly trembling voice, he asked why Rhea was looking at him with such a serious look. The girl answered seriously that you need to ask politely in the morning, "Did you sleep well?" and turned to the boy Sig, to which he hissed indignantly, why should he ask this and stop calling him strange nicknames? The girl asked what she should call him then. To which the boy, a little embarrassed, replied that the girl should call him Cian. The girl, after thinking, said that it would be according to his will, but from now on, he must speak to her only as you. The girl said in a very serious voice that in order to live in this world, one must learn etiquette. This is the only way to become a kind and good person. If Cian spoke to her informally again, at that moment her gaze was impossibly cold and frightening, as if she had gone crazy. But she stopped short, not finishing her sentence. The girl felt a very strange aura. Cian continued to be stubborn. He didn't understand and didn't want to address her as you, since they looked almost the same age. Rhea, as if she hadn't even heard his indignation, quickly threw a cloak over her nightdress and was about to leave. Cian shouted where she was going and that he would go with her. But the door slammed shut in front of him and wouldn't budge, as if it had been locked from the outside. He recalled in panic what Rhea had said about him being 12 years old and not knowing any table etiquette, how to behave, or how to respect his elders. Cian remembered the cold expression on the girl's face when she said that he needed to be taught a lot, and that if he spoke to her informally again, it would be very bad. Did she do this because she didn't like him? He was wrong. He shouted about it and knocked on the door with all his strength. He called her, and tears flowed non-stop down his cheeks. Could it really be that she had left him? The door was locked. Whether by accident or on purpose, he didn't know. The man was already waiting for her. He knew that the holy swordswoman would come to him. Looking at the guest with bright, charming eyes, he calmly said that the girl had arrived quite quickly. The girl was clearly not in the best mood. She said his name, Sephiroth, with complete, somewhat cold seriousness in her voice. The girl asked what the rush was, and besides, he even showed up in person. The man apologized for showing up unannounced. He had come there specifically, and not to her abode, so as not to embarrass the girl, and she was indignant that she had actually left the child alone because of him, and added that if he had nothing to say, then perhaps she would go. But the man, smiling predatorily, said that a revelation had been sent to her, and it is associated with an evil god. This handsome man in front of the holy swordswoman is called Sephiroth. He is none other than the successor of the good god Shiner and the current holy king, but do not be fooled by his handsome appearance, for his nature is extremely cunning. The man asked why the girl didn't sit down next to him and listen to him, inviting her with a slight gesture. Rhea thought that if it weren't for the coincidence of interests, she wouldn't have even thought of entering into an alliance with him. She asked what kind of revelation had been sent down to me, to which Sephiroth replied that they had not seen each other for so long, and the girl was very cruel to him. She could have at least stayed for tea. But the holy swordswoman told him to stop talking nonsense and get straight to the point. The young man replied that in 4 years, a new star would rise in the eastern sky. This star will be a hero who will be born under the protection of a good god. She, the holy swordswoman Astria, will become the mentor of this great hero and will impart to him all the knowledge the girl has. And after completing this mission, at the hands of a man possessed by evil, will find eternal peace. The girl knew that today was that day. She felt it. The day when she will be told of her predetermined destiny. After a moment of silence, the holy swordswoman stood up and was about to leave, since that was all the man had to say, but he stopped her, asking permission, if she would allow it, to grant her the blessing of light. Even if fate is sealed, she can pray for help. If she accepts this holy blessing, the good god will do everything possible to protect the holy swordswoman Astria. The girl thought that, of course, but it turned out that the good god Shiner could not find the incarnation of the evil god because he was prevented by the absolute law of causality, the so-called order. Therefore, all that a good god can know about his incarnation is the year of birth. In other words, even a good god has his limits. Moreover, the blessing of a good god is valid only during the fulfillment of a mission. The moment she imparts all her skills and knowledge to the hero, the blessing will also disappear. True, Sephiroth, unaware of the existence of the original, would hardly have suggested this knowing the truth. Rhea thanked him for the offer, but she would probably refuse. She was capable of carrying out her mission herself. If she accepted it, Xian might be exposed. The man took the girl by the hand and tried to detain her, but she replied that he was not in the mood today and was somehow too emotional. She called him by name. Holy swordswoman Astria was terribly late. However, the girl left a magic circle so Xian would not be able to go outside. But when she entered the room, Rhea was frozen with horror. What finally happened here while she was gone? She rushed like a bullet towards the boy, who was sitting in the corner of the room and appeared to be crying. There was something wrong with his hand. She realized it as soon as she saw him. She asked him to wait a little and be patient. She would cure her with a potion. But Xian didn't seem to listen to her. The boy rushed into her arms. The boy, almost crying and trembling, muttered that the door did not open, and he thought he was going crazy. He thought that the girl left because he didn't listen to her. Looking around, she realized where this disorder was coming from. The holy swordswoman's mind recalled Sephiroth's words about the possibility that the embodiment of evil would approach her. It would be more profitable for him to lure the girl to his dark side than to kill her. If she encounters the seed of evil, then let her be more careful, let her not succumb to its charms, because evil penetrates into the weakest spots of a person. To be honest, she couldn't even deny it. After all, she brought Xian with her, because she couldn't mercilessly push away that little hand that reminded her of herself as a child. The girl asked little Xian for forgiveness, asking him to forgive her for leaving without explanation. He couldn't get out because she set up a magic circle, but the girl did this because there is one person with a good sense of smell, and so she did this to protect the boy, but it seems like she only did harm. She sat the boy down in front of her and asked him to listen to her. Rhea had intended to follow her predetermined destiny from the very beginning, but she made it clear that she would never leave Xian, because she was going to do everything to prevent evil from consuming this boy. Shen, completely moved, almost crying, threw himself into the girl's arms, whining that he would always obey her and begging her never to leave him. A few minutes later, when Xian had almost calmed down, Rhea told him that she had thought of something. The holy swordswoman asked him with particular enthusiasm what Xian liked more, the mountains or the seas. Suddenly, a thought came to the girl's mind that she had never thought of before, that in order to raise Xian well, she needed to create all the right conditions for him. Xian thought for a long time to answer her question, as if he was going through all the possible answers in his head. Finally, he replied that he liked deserted places. So, after much questioning, Ria made a bold decision and bought a house. But the location for the house in which she planned to raise the child turned out to be a little unsuitable. It was a separate house in the middle of a lake, surrounded by a forest where monsters lived, and to get there, it was necessary to sail by boat. It's no wonder that this eccentric curmudgeon, who insisted that this was her former laboratory and that the place itself was very quiet, sold this house so cheaply. The girl was beside herself. She angrily covered her face with her hands and swore that this Jenny would get it from her if she just showed her face. And besides, Xian added very coldly that it was fashionable to live in such a place. But, to his great surprise, he was not afraid of the location of the house itself. He was indignant at how one could live in a house that was not cleaned, had no furniture or dishes. Even if there was a barrier, they would still live next to monsters. It would have been better if they had stayed in that hotel. These words finished off the girl, and this after she had tried to find them a home. But the girl noticed that Xian was too nervous, although his reproaches sounded with great confidence. It seems he is afraid that she will change her mind, because he didn't like the house. What a stubborn boy he is. Finally, unexpectedly, instead of scolding him for his ingratitude, she stroked his hair and added that the dishes could be bought. Besides, if you look closely, it's not that bad here. And now this is their home, in which they will live together. Shin looked at their now home for a long time. From now on, they will live here together. Ria was touched. Xian looked too cute for a 12-year-old boy. But he pulled her hand away, again began to complain about the fact that he was, in fact, not a child, and that he did not need so much tenderness. Ria thought that at 12 years old she was no longer a child. She did not understand anything about today's youth. Running closer to the house, the boy turned around and began calling the girl. If they want to finish cleaning today, then they need to start as soon as possible. His voice was very joyful. The cleaning was in full swing. Floors everywhere needed to be washed, dusted, and a lot of other things needed to be done. Things kept falling down and had to be rearranged. In short, it was a lot of work. Finally, after many hours, 5 rooms were spotlessly cleaned. They were very tired. But he still needed to go shopping. Ria opened some strange portal, which surprised the boy greatly. She explained to the shocked Xian that this was her space portal. You just had to say the key word and you could put anything in there. She, being very pleased, asked if this was the first time Xian had seen such magic, wasn't it? But, with a smug smile, she leaned towards his face and slyly said that it was too early to be surprised. Suddenly, the bracelet, which had been resting peacefully on her thin arm, began to glow with a bright blue light. And in one short moment, the boy and girl found themselves on a busy street, full of shops and various stores. Xian asked, not hiding his great surprise, where they were. Ria replied that it was a shopping street she often visited when she was the daughter of a marquise. She also added that it was very crowded here, and so that the boy would not get lost, she would hold his hand. Shin's reaction, who considered himself an adult, was bright and full of indignation, but the girl continued to list that they needed to buy furniture, groceries, and much more. Suddenly, a crowd of children ran up to Ria, shouting at the top of their voices that their aunt was very beautiful. They began asking their aunt if she was a sorceress and if she could use other magic, to which Ria replied positively, of course. At that moment, she let go of Jian's hand, which made him either surprised or angry. She approached the children, stroked their heads, and happily, with a smile, replied that, of course, she knew how to use other magic too. Shin was overcome with a storm of emotions. Was he really jealous of Rei for these children? He called out the girl's name, to which she turned around. Suddenly, Xian, who usually kept his emotions in check, grabbed the girl's hand and dragged her away. He mumbled that she had told him they didn't have time to waste and needed to finish shopping quickly. The girl certainly didn't expect this from her pupil and hesitantly said that yes, that was true, but there was no need to rush. She didn't expect this from him. The boy was literally forcing her to run after her, and Ria asked him to slow down. Shin needed new clothes, since being in decent society requires an appropriate appearance. Ria was touched. All the images he tried on suited this boy. While the boy was examining the tea set, the salesman told the girl that the furniture would be ready in a week. They bought everything they needed, but Sian seriously told the girl that she needed to be more careful since dishes made from ordinary wood would break quickly. Finally, they were about to go get groceries, when suddenly someone from around the corner rudely called the girl and asked if such a beauty would like to play with them. The tall man, smiling insolently, drawled that he knew one killer game. Rhea just thought about why, wherever she went, she always ran into such scum. But suddenly, she turned around in great surprise. Sian said menacingly, threatening, "How dare they behave like that with a girl?" A terribly murderous aura emanated from him, and the holy swordswoman sensed it immediately. The boy was ready to tear these boars to shreds. Even the men felt the chill that ran down their spines. Rhea didn't understand why the awakening began so suddenly, but she knew it was not too late to stop him. The girl, using her magic, approached the boy and grabbed him by the shoulders. She had no intention of feeling sorry for him. She only said loudly that he shouldn't think about such bad things. The boy calmed down quickly, as if by magic, and quietly said that he understood everything and would not do it again. Finally, Rhea calmed down. What a relief. The men already thought that everything had been settled, but the girl started yelling at them so loudly that their ears started ringing. It was all because of them, and what were they even doing here? Something dark and viscous was bubbling in the cauldron. It looked like a magic potion that was supposed to cast a spell or kill a person with its taste and smell. Rhea screwed up. She just wanted to cook dinner so she and Sian could finally eat after this hard day. But this dish looked and smelled so awful that it was better not to even try it. Why did she tell the boy that she would cook dinner? She didn't even cook for herself. She doesn't know how to cook at all. It even got to the point that when she was a commander, her subordinates begged her not to cook anything. She thought that since the book said that cooking was easy, then she could do it too. Maybe she should buy a ready-made dinner right now and throw out this nightmare. But Sian, as if reading her thoughts, calmly told the girl to move away and he would take a look himself. He emptied the glass with an important expression on his face before approaching the cauldron. While the guy silently stared at the dinner the girl had prepared, Rhea kept persuading him to buy a ready-made dinner and throw out this nightmare. But Jian, with complete calm on his face, said that if you add onions and spices, it won't be so bad, and also a bay leaf. The boy added that the girl should set the table, and he would cook. Rhea felt much better from his words, and she went to set the table with a smile. These were moments of ordinary, simple happiness. The kitchen was filled with the delicious smell of the food the boy was preparing, and the girl was already finishing setting the table. The girl thought about how skillfully he managed it. Sian wasn't lying that he could cook well. She deliberately does not mention what happened earlier. Right now, Sian is unaware of the power that lies dormant within him, and if she mentions it thoughtlessly, the boy might not be able to bear it. If she scolds him for attacking those scum, his psyche may simply not be able to withstand it. The girl was immersed in her thoughts. The boy's fate, and along with him her fate, worried Rhea very much. To prevent all the horror and nightmare that could happen due to this boy's fault, the holy swordswoman must be by his side at all times. Finally, Sian finished preparing dinner, and the girl broke into a smile. She praised him and affectionately called him an enviable groom. Suddenly, without looking up from putting the food on the dishes, Sian unexpectedly asked the girl how tall she was, which made her very surprised. Still not understanding why he asked this so suddenly, Rhea replied that she was 168 centimeters tall, to which the boy added that the age difference was not that great. But no matter how you look at it, there is still a big difference between them. Rhea thought that they looked more like mother and son. After tasting the dish that Sian had prepared, Rhea froze in bewilderment and surprise. She was delighted. The dish prepared by the boy was incredibly tasty, and she didn't even expect it to turn out so well. She beamed with delight and said that the woman who marries the boy in the future will definitely be the happiest in the world. To which he, very quietly, as if talking to himself, added that Rhea would also be the happiest in the world. The girl didn't even immediately understand what exactly he meant, so she replied that when a person eats, he always becomes happier. Trying not to show his sincere feelings because he was already an adult, Sian only replied that he understood. He was very touched. Suddenly, Rhea noticed for the first time that the boy was holding the spoon exactly like she did. She realized that Sian was watching her actions and learning her manners. Embarrassed but keeping a straight face, the boy said that if the girl wanted to eat something, she should tell him and he would cook it. Because Rhea doesn't know how to cook at all, the arrow pierced the girl's honor and pride with terrible pain. He added that you can't just throw all the ingredients into a pot and call it cooking, because that's just a mockery of the food. Another arrow pierced her pride. But Xian continued as if nothing had happened. He smiled and said that he was very pleased. When he smiled, he blossomed like a beautiful and delicate spring flower. He was pleased because it was the first time someone cooked for him, even if the dish didn't turn out well. Rhea didn't expect such sincere words from him, and she broke into a peaceful smile. The girl replied that there was no need to thank her, and that next time she would cook something really tasty. They decided to sleep together in the same bed until a separate bed was ready for the boy. But as night fell, it was no longer Xian, but the one who lived inside him, and he was extremely dissatisfied with the clothes the girl dressed him in. It was simply outrageous. How could an evil god be dressed like that? If he had his way, he would immediately kill the Holy Swordswoman, but he endures for a greater purpose. He had felt it before, but this girl really was strange. Such a quantity of black ether in her heart should have led to madness and death long ago, but he didn't understand why she was still okay. He can, of course, absorb all her energy and ease the pain, but doubts and memories of how the girl spent time with him and dressed him in different costumes made him put this idea aside for later. He turned around and, like a little child, decided that it would be better for him to have fun and let the girl suffer from nightmares. But the night succubus was not going to leave the Holy Swordswoman alone. He seemed to be asking in a sweet voice how he could help her. Through despair, humiliation, grief, he fell silent for a moment, and the one in the boy's body listened to his words. The succubus finally said something that drove the dark god crazy. He wanted to help the girl with pleasure. His hands touched the sweet face of the sleeping girl, and he was ready to begin his plan. In a low voice, he drawled his words about how even if the Holy Swordswoman pretended to be innocent and pure, he was sure that she would like it. What he was going to do to her would definitely be to the girl's taste. The patience of the evil god in Xian's body snapped at the succubus's last words. He rushed towards the evil spirits. No one dares touch what belongs to him. But suddenly, a blow of enormous force, which sent the devil flying back, hit him right in the jaw. Rhea, who a moment ago seemed asleep, used all her strength. Shin didn't even immediately understand what exactly had just happened, and he could only watch in fascination as the Holy Swordswoman dealt with the succubus. He was completely perplexed and could not even imagine what kind of unusual way of exorcising a demon this was. The dark god thought that this was all very strange. Even if she had overcome the limits, without a contract with the spirit, she would not have been able to see the demon. He thought she was carefree, but it seemed her 5 senses were quite heightened. The girl, not yet fully awake, looked at the boy with curiosity and turned to him. She asked him with concern why he wasn't sleeping, to which he replied, seemingly with indifference, that he had had a nightmare. Yawning, Rhea casually replied that it was no wonder she had had a bad dream too. It seemed the demon had come after all. Suddenly, the girl grabbed the guy by the hand and pulled him towards her. Xian could not restrain himself and shouted loudly what she was doing. But Rhea, tenderly covering the boy with a blanket, laid him down next to her, telling him not to worry. She would protect him from everything. In a calm and slightly sleepy voice, she quietly said that she knew how to exorcise demons, because her elf friends taught her how to do it. The boy thought that she had very crude methods of exorcism. She stroked Xian's shoulder lightly, and with great human tenderness. The girl's voice simultaneously lulled and enchanted him. Behind these kind words, which were supposed to calm and instill hope, there remained only deep night and silence. The girl had long since fallen asleep. But Xian, or rather the dark god, was not going to fall asleep so easily. How can a person who suffers from nightmares every night and cries for his mother protect him? How can a weakling like her protect him, the immortal dark god? The girl's words, her smile and face floated into his memory, but instead of affection, they evoked only laughter and contempt. He laughed at her self-confidence, at the role of a strong and courageous girl that she played when she was next to him. Let her try to protect him from the good god who feeds on carrion. He was amused by this pathetic attempt to appear strong. The mask of a brave girl that she put on in his presence only emphasized her real weakness. He touched her with the same care with which darkness envelops light, but his aura, deadly and cold, did not wake her. He knew for sure that he would kill her without a drop of regret when the time came. He knew for sure that he would kill her without a drop of regret when the time came. After all, her existence was only a temporary refuge for him and not an eternal haven. A week later, their life together had found its rhythm. Breakfast, lessons, cooking. Right now she was eating, her eyes closed in bliss, and every crumb of this simple dinner was sweeter than any delicacy for her. The girl wondered with admiration whether the boy's dream was to become a royal chef, since it was the first time she had seen a boy who could cook so well. But the boy answered very dryly that it came by chance. Astria understood that he did not want to answer because it was somehow connected with his adoptive parents. She, of course, really wanted to ask him why exactly he became an evil god and what had happened in general, but the girl did not want to disturb Sion's old wounds once again. Then the girl asked very carefully what Sion wanted to do, what he would like to do in life. He hesitantly began to say that he had one wish. This greatly interested Rhea, and a smile appeared on her face. The boy hesitated to say it out loud, as if gathering his strength and thoughts, but finally he asked what if the girl didn't mind. Could she teach him fencing? Rhea hadn't expected him to have such a desire, and his words surprised her. Rhea thought about his request. Fencing could be dangerous for him and but the evil god from the novel did not wield a sword. He could crush a man's head with just his strength, so why would he need a sword? The evil god used the sword only once to do something terrible. To mock the hero, having crushed him, he mocked the hero's defeat, asking whether the evil god was not better than he at wielding his mentor's sword. And he used this sword only once to kill Astria. The girl was in despair. She was so confused that she didn't even really answer the boy. The reaction of the holy swordswoman made Jian worry. The girl seemed to fall into a trance, did not answer his questions, and did not react at all. He is such a powerful seed of evil that she cannot even imagine the limits of his physical capabilities. If the girl decides to do so and takes on teaching this guy fencing, this can lead to terrible consequences that no one even suspects. But an unexpected sound pulled the girl out of the vicious circle of depressing thoughts. Someone was calling her. Approaching the desk, the girl touched the magic ball and answered the call, asking who it was. On the other side, someone screamed so loudly that any moment more and Rhea would have fainted with burst eardrums. A young man with broad shoulders and a low but kind voice apologized with a laugh. It was the Grand Master of the Two Crowns named Hex. He enthusiastically told me that he himself had become a bit nervous they hadn't brought in such good booze for a long time, and he wanted to know about having a drink with his girlfriend. The girl seemed to be hypnotized by this proposal. She had a terrible, unbearable desire to drop everything and run there, finally have a drink and not think about anything that was bothering her. But having overcome the enormous craving, Rhea, gathering all her strength, refused, saying that she had quit drinking. To which Hex laughed rudely, saying he couldn't believe it. A girl who couldn't live without a drink couldn't just stop drinking. The man laughed and said that in all honesty, Rhea had to admit that this was not true. It was very annoying. But the holy swordswoman firmly replied that she was sober for now, and let the impudent Hex remember that. He abruptly changed the subject, thereby making the girl both surprised and indignant. She would soon have to return the title of holy swordswoman. The man reported that a real genius had appeared, Arenheier, the son of the Marquis of Grodin, and asked if the girl knew him. Hearing this, the floor seemed to disappear under the girl's feet, the world collapsed, and she herself seemed to be sentenced to death. Of course she knew him, because he is the main character of this novel, Arenheier el Grodin, nicknamed Aren. If we talk about him, this man is a rising star, born from the revelation of a good god. And in the original novel, he is her student, who wanted to marry her after his victory. Aren is a stubborn young man who is always straightforward with his mentor, Astria. She thought about how she had never imagined Hex would mention him, but first she had to pretend the girl didn't know him. Hex even wanted to take the young man as his apprentice, since he wanted to become the strongest with the help of a sword, and the man was a master of fist-fighting. A male voice from the ball asked what Astria thought about this, whether she would take Arena as her student. The thought that the plot was moving too fast, and that at this rate Rhea would soon be killed, made the girl grimace. At the same time, Sion was worried that Rhea's face looked too worried. However, the holy swordswoman does not take just anyone as a student, and he himself asked her to teach him. He tormented himself with the thought that he had acted too brazenly. All I had to do was quietly clean and cook, and not catch her eye again. And if she tells him that he was leaving, what will happen to him? He didn't know what to do. He blamed himself. And suddenly, as luck would have it, her voice was heard from behind. Is it really so sudden? Is it really right now that he will be left without a teacher, without a home, alone, without her? But the girl smiled kindly and said that they needed to go pick up Sian's furniture. Finally, the housework was finished and they were alone again. The furniture Sian chose was generally very simple but good. It was clear he knew his stuff. He doesn't seem to like bright or complex patterns. But the boy was still tormented by thoughts and worries. His gaze darted around, and his eyes were wet. The girl's words about needing to leave for a while and whether he could wait for her in the cafe almost physically knocked the boy off his feet. And Ria noticed it right away. She couldn't help but notice, because the boy looked like a small wild animal that had once again released its claws and was hissing. Then the girl guessed what exactly might be bothering her student. Most likely, he remembered the incident when she left him alone without warning, and he is afraid that the girl will not return. Then, kneeling before him, she addressed the boy by name and held out something to him in her hand. It was her mother's thing, a very important thing for her, which Astria never took off. Knowing this, the boy began to deny it. He could not understand why Ria was giving him this bracelet. Her face was completely calm, and her voice was firm, but at the same time soothing. It seemed to her that Sian needed something more convincing than words. As long as he has this bracelet, she will definitely come back, so he shouldn't worry. Finally, the wild animal hid its claws and became kinder. Its gaze softened and it relaxed greatly. It will wait, so let the girl return quickly. Ria, laughing, reassured him that she was going to the bakery and that he, if he was too worried, could watch from the cafe. The boy obeyed her and sat peacefully at a table in the cafe. Shin looked with curiosity at the decoration that rested peacefully on his hand. This is the first time he received something like this. It's not even about the jewelry, but about the fact that this thing is important to Ria. But Sian caught himself with the terrible thought that some kind of greed was awakening within him. He knows perfectly well that Ria is strong enough that she doesn't need anyone's help, but the guy still doesn't want to be a burden to her and another problem in her life. These thoughts gnawed at him and he could not get rid of them. His only dream is to become stronger in order to protect Ria and not be a burden in her eyes. And then one day, but his thoughts were interrupted by a male voice addressing him. A man spoke rudely to him, which immediately made Sian wary. The man's face was not visible, but his cold and contemptuous gaze could be felt even through the fabric. He was asking where he got this bracelet from. At this time, Ria, unsuspecting, was almost dancing with joy from the delicious smell of fresh bread that she had bought. Sian would definitely like it. As expected, the craftsman's skill was something, she thought, and anticipated Jian's reaction to the delicious fresh-baked goods. But suddenly her path was blocked, and this forced her to be distracted from her pleasant, warm thoughts. The man didn't want to let the girl into the coffee shop, even when she said that there was a man waiting for her inside. There was a thief in the coffee shop, and they were now interrogating him. Ria was horrified. Some boy stole the bracelet and one man made a noise. She understood who exactly they were talking about, and this is very bad. She didn't care that the man had forbidden her entry. She had to make sure that her suspicions were wrong and that he was okay. But still, there was a noise because of Sian. It was a terrible sight. The boy looked at everyone with a predatory gaze, as if he was ready to pounce on his offenders and sink his fangs and claws into their faces. Ria couldn't figure out what exactly had happened here in such a short time, but she was sure that Sian, her student, couldn't have stolen anything. The man demanded that he give him the bracelet, but the boy resisted and almost shouted that he would not give it up and that the bracelet was given to him by someone dear to him. The girl's patience snapped. She could no longer watch the boy being bullied. Finally she came. Finally everything could be explained, but the boy was frightened by how angry the girl was. When Sian shouted her name, the man also turned around. He definitely knew her. Having freed her hands from the purchases, the holy swordswoman was already ready to rush into battle. A dark aura seemed to surround her, and she looked more like an angry devil than a saint. The man took off the hood with which he had been covering his face all this time. It was Hex, and he, as if nothing had happened, wanted to say hello to an old acquaintance, but it was not to be. A strong punch landed right on his nose, which he certainly couldn't have expected. Finally, they moved to a deserted place and cleared up this unpleasant situation. The man was surprised that they actually knew each other, and he thought that some boy was wearing Ria's mother's jewelry. He was worried, but Ria was in a belligerent mood. After all, how dare the Grand Master threaten a child? The man wanted to say something in his defense, but stopped himself, looking closely at the two of them. Who is this boy anyway? Ria was at a loss. She didn't know what to answer to this seemingly simple question. Shin, too, didn't know how to react. After all, who was he to her? He wasn't a student, not a son, not a relative. But suddenly, Rhea did what Xian had been dreaming about all this time, but hadn't dared to voice. The holy swordswoman, taking him by the shoulder, confidently answered that this was her student. Hex is the only friend Rhea can tell everything to. When they were active soldiers, they went through hardships together and helped each other. She saw his dark history firsthand, and frankly, she has nothing to hide and doesn't want to. But Xian is the physical embodiment of an evil god, so if she tells him honestly about it, she can't be sure that Hex's reaction will be positive. But she also can't say that, due to certain circumstances, she had a child with whom she has no connection being a swordswoman. It would be extremely strange to say such a thing. The man thought for a moment and came to the conclusion that this boy was her student, which is why she stopped drinking. Shin didn't know how to react to this, to cry, laugh, or swear. Hex walked up to Rhea and quietly whispered in her ear that he was saying this because he was genuinely worried about her. And besides, she should not cook under any circumstances. The food on the street is of good quality lately, so there is no need to cook. There is no point in poisoning the boy. For these rude words, the man received a second blow, this time to the ribs and stomach with a kick. This preventative measure was supposed to clearly explain to him how to properly communicate with a girl. The girl was not in the mood, so she dryly told him to stop talking nonsense, and besides, he still hadn't apologized to her student. The man groaned and agreed, because he had just slandered an innocent boy. Barely able to stand on his feet, the Grandmaster apologized to the Holy Swordswoman's disciple, but Xian was more concerned not with his words, but with whether the man was okay from such a powerful blow. Unexpectedly, Rhea hugged the boy from behind and pulled him towards her, sarcastically and ironically telling him not to accept his apology. Trying to make amends with just apologies is shameless, but he didn't even listen to her. The girl was too close and it was very embarrassing. They were about to leave, but Hex shouted after them. He was very interested in their unfinished conversation. Was it true that the girl was not going to meet Arenheier? The Holy Swordswoman stopped. It was clear that these words were not empty words for her. Her expression was tired, her gaze and voice dry. She said firmly and without enthusiasm that this conversation had long since ended. Remembering their previous conversation on this topic, the girl was again visited by that same unpleasant feeling. She dryly replied that no, she would not meet him, period. Still, according to the original, she should meet Aren, but in a few years. And if she thoughtlessly met him now, and Xian ran into him, it would only make this whole chaos worse. She also added that even if, as the man says, Arenheier's talent is outstanding, then now the Holy Swordswoman only needs Jian as her disciple. From these words, the boy's gaze brightened and his eyes became moist. Did she really think so? The conversation ended and they teleported away, leaving the man alone. Finally, they found themselves home, away from all this endless hustle and bustle that seemed to be haunting them. The girl asked the boy if Hex made him feel bad, and if so, she apologized for his behavior. He was her old friend. Then Xian realized that this was precisely why she had introduced him as a student. It must have been awkward to say that the swordswoman Saint Astria had taken in some orphan. By the way, the girl was very interested in why he didn't give the bracelet to that scary guy when he threatened him, but the guy firmly replied that he couldn't do that, because it belonged to Rhea's mother and was very important to her. The girl thought what a good boy he was, but the bracelet was actually enchanted with a tracking spell, but it would be better to keep this fact a secret. She added that the next time he would simply throw it away, since the guy's safety was much more important to him, but Xian knew he would never do that. Finally changing the subject, the girl took something in a cardboard package out of her magic pocket. She cheerfully said that they couldn't stand it any longer and that they should celebrate the boy's birthday. But Xian's reaction was strange. It was as if he didn't even know that he had a holiday today. His eyes sparkled with joy. He was very touched because no one had ever congratulated him. A few days ago, Rhea asked him when he was born. Then she found him reading a book, which surprised her greatly. He read Azazel's biography, and the Holy Swordswoman was greatly surprised that the boy could read. The guy seemed to ignore her question and asked why she needed this information, to which she replied that she was just curious, but he didn't know this, which greatly surprised Rhea. How could a person not know when his birthday was? It was clear that the boy had become very sad and had closed himself off again, a characteristic trait of his character that the girl was desperately trying to come to terms with. He replied dryly that she had not asked him such questions and had not spoken to him while he was reading. He was nervous, worried, agitated, and he couldn't hide it. The guy realized that the girl immediately understood that he could not answer and was evading because he himself did not know the answer. She looked at him with a smile, and care and tenderness could be seen in her eyes. The girl said that she was his mentor, and how could she not know her student's birthday? But Sian didn't fully understand what exactly the girl was getting at. She began to tell me that it turns out she has 2 surnames. One is the surname of her family where she was born, and the other is the surname bestowed upon her by His Majesty the Emperor. Then, when the girl was recognized as a holy swordswoman, Lashild. To inherit this surname from her means to become her direct disciple. She turned to the boy in a serious tone. He looked at her with an unenchanted gaze, full of admiration. The holy swordswoman Astria bestows her surname, Lashild, upon Sigrian. But even now the girl was consumed by doubts. She didn't know for sure if she was doing the right thing. What if Sian, taught by her in swordsmanship, in the distant future, destroys this world with it? She was sure that she would definitely regret her decision. The name of this legendary sword is Barasilda. It automatically adapts to its owner. The boy couldn't believe what was happening. He was recognized as her student, and she was giving him this legendary sword. This simply could not happen. He was overwhelmed with feelings that he could not and did not want to cope with. Sian threw himself into the girl's tight embrace. He whispered words of gratitude, so quietly that you had to listen to hear. His eyes filled with tears, and the boy admitted that he thought Ria would abandon him, drive him away, or leave him alone again. He loves her and confesses it. Love, respect, and admiration mixed together. Ria smiled. She had promised that she would never leave him. Let him stop crying. It's time to finally celebrate. He got a new surname, and in honor of his new beginning, let today's journey become Xian's birthday. On the day she took in Sigrian, the holy swordswoman made the decision that she would put everything on the line to make this child happy, so that he would never even think of destroying this world. But if, despite all this, Xian still succumbs to evil, she will stop him even if it costs her own life. Now that his room had furniture, it finally looked like the real thing. She said in a teacher's voice that he should go to bed now because tomorrow they would start sword training, so he needed to get plenty of rest. The girl was about to leave, but noticed that Sian was thinking about something and something was bothering him. She guessed, and it made her smile. Doesn't Sian really want to sleep alone? The words spoken out loud made the boy's face flush. Sigrian, in order to hide his embarrassment, crawled under the blanket with his head and began to chase the girl out of the room. He seemed to really like the fact that the girl took him as a student. He became much more honest than he was before. She wanted to stroke his hair, but remembered that the boy didn't like it. So, after wishing him good night, she tenderly kissed him on the top of his head. She was about to leave, but a small hand grabbed her hand and stopped her. Shin jumped out of bed, reached out to the girl, and very timidly kissed Astria on the cheek. Fighting the embarrassment that washed over him, he wished the girl good night in return. This gesture greatly surprised the girl. She did not expect it, but she was not angry at him. His heart was pounding inside him, and his cheeks were burning from the blood that had spilled. Ria was sleeping peacefully in her bed, and outside the window it was a dark, deep night. But night is not the time of Xian, but the time of the dark god. He was pleased that the girl would actually take him as a student. Because of his dark aura, Rei's face distorted in her sleep. She was definitely dreaming of something bad, something that was troubling her. How easily she opens her heart and is ridiculously weak. It will be very funny to deal with his sworn enemy with her own sword. He is looking forward to it with great impatience. That moment when she, his stupid, ignorant Astria, having lost everything, falls into despair. The succubi kept an eye on them all the time, especially on their prey, who was so vulnerable in their sleep. Finally he left, leaving her alone. But Ria heard absolutely everything. It was not easy to pretend that she knew nothing. This damned evil god will do all sorts of things using Xian's body. She remembered his terrifyingly chilling words about how the girl was perfect to give him back his strength, about what if she doesn't prove her usefulness. Then he will kill her at the right moment and will not regret it one bit. It was so funny to listen to his chatter. The girl laughed at his belief that he could kill his enemy with her own sword. Unfortunately, this will not happen. 3 years passed since their peaceful but interesting life. As usual in the morning, Xian tried to wake up the girl to go to training, but she refused. The boy who was before has long since grown up and matured. He has become truly handsome. Daily hard training only made him stronger and tougher. The one who previously knew nothing and could not stand up for himself now easily cuts tree trunks with his sword. He really grew up. It turns out that Rhea had been watching his entire training session, standing silently at a distance and smiling. It was important for him to hear her instructions, so the guy asked if he had managed to practice the new strikes. The girl admitted to herself that her student really did have talent. 3 years have passed since she taught him fencing, and thanks to his diligence and talent, he has reached the level of a first-class swordsman. If he continued to learn so quickly, he would soon be able to master even rudimentary sword chi. And without much effort, he will reach the level of a sword master. And he also grew quite noticeably. Fencing is fencing, but his aristocratic grace is entirely her merit. It was very difficult to get rid of his habits of a wild animal, releasing claws and hissing at everyone. The girl told him that she had things to do today. She needed to go meet Hex again and let the guy train. But these words enraged him. He shouted that why was she going with him again? She went yesterday. What is so special about this man that she meets him every day? The girl understood that Cian didn't treat Hex very well because of that incident with the bracelet, but he is still her friend, whom she has known for over 100 years. No matter how much he is against it, he won't be able to stop them from seeing each other. Grabbing Rhea's hand, he asked a strange question that the girl did not expect. After all, he was much closer to Rhea than Hex. And if she goes drinking with him, then he can replace him, so let her not go and stay next to him. This is how he acts up. That character trait that the girl was unable to correct and retrain. Whether he already thinks of himself as an adult, or whether the influence of the evil god is taking its toll, he constantly tries to keep the girl close to him. For that, he got a punch in the forehead. The girl started scolding Cian. She shouted at him, "How dare a minor drink and even talk like that to his mentor, equal to the heavens?" This is not what she taught him. Her tone suddenly changed to icy. She concluded that it was impossible to say that, and she prescribed him a blow to the neck as a preventative measure. Shen had gotten used to it, but it was still quite painful. The guy was lying on the floor, literally dead. His body ached not only from the blows, but also from the constant training. And the girl looked at him with a terribly cold gaze. She has a good reason for leaving Cian alone, and it's quite simple. She needs to train too. Several years ago, when she vowed to teach Xian swordsmanship, she remembered the mind sword technique. The sword of the mind technique expels the demon from within. This technique, created by her uncle, the 5th Saint Swordsman, is a swordsmanship that, as the name suggests, exorcises the demon within. She was going to teach him this when Cian reached a certain age and level. Unfortunately, this reception is not yet complete. If she passes on an unfinished mind sword technique to Zhan, he might not be able to withstand the reverse force and die. In general, because of all these circumstances, she had to leave every time, hiding behind Hex. Because she needs to finish the reception somehow, but the problem is that the progress is extremely slow, and if this continues, Cian might surpass her. Suddenly, a loud crash distracted her from her thoughts. Huge giants were approaching her. But instead of attacking, one took Rhea in his palm, and he sat her on his shoulder laughing. Still, the morning was good. These giants turned out to be her old acquaintances. It was a family of ogres. The little ogre handed the girl an apple, to which she replied that next time she would bring him something tasty. She remembered exactly how she met them. It was originally a high-level dungeon, but just recently, the boss, a 2-headed evil cyclops, lived here. And then the girl defeated him. She was infuriated by the fact that he growled at her, which was very impolite. That's why it's gone now. From that moment on, this place became her training ground and place for meditation. And the family of orgs began to act as gatekeepers and deal with violators. It's good that even though they are monsters, there are also those who support her. She was in a great mood today to train well. I needed to hone my skills. At the same time, in their house, Cian was fast asleep. He had been very tired lately, but his sleep was restless. The guy had a bad dream. He couldn't understand what was happening around him. Nothing could be seen. Was there really not even light here? And besides, the dream seemed very strange. The uneasy feeling did not leave him. The feeling he couldn't shake off was fear, which he was experiencing for the first time. For the first time in his life, he felt such animal fear. Finally, the one who had brought him into this dream spoke in a low voice, instilling even more fear, asking whether the man was afraid of his own incarnation. He sat above Jian on the throne, making the boy's head spin. What's going on here anyway? Why is he here and how to get out of here? And the main question is, who is it? The dark aura was incredibly strong. It flew like an arrow to the guy's neck and began to strangle him. Whoever dragged him here got nothing but pleasure from the sight of the suffering and suffocating boy. Such an insolent attitude towards him will not lead to anything good. He himself instinctively understood who exactly was in front of him. One gesture from him is enough to wipe him off the face of the earth. But Xian shouted that he would not lose to anyone like this demon, so he suggested that they at least get out from under his endless power first. The boy was so weak and had so much pride, but suddenly, through his sleep, Xian heard the voice of Rhea, who had returned. And this man also heard her voice. He cursed that the girl came so early. Finally, the demon decided to teach him a lesson the boy should not have allowed this creature to take over his mind. He is only a victim who exists for his sake. But Xian realized that something strange had happened. Just recently, he had felt only boundless fear of this creature. But now he is not afraid at all. He said with a predatory grin that it seems he is not the victim here. And he kicked the evil demon in the chest. It was an unexpected blow, full of fury and anger. At this, the demon threw the guy away like a stuffed toy. Flying into the impenetrable darkness, he thought that he would die now and that his whole struggle would end. But he woke up with a loud sigh as if he was drowning. Rhea was completely scared. He finally woke up. She already thought that the guy would not wake up. She was very worried and asked him if he had a nightmare. Her eyes were full of excitement. He rose from the bed silently, as if he did not fully understand what exactly had happened to him. It was an all too realistic dream that took all the strength out of him. His head fell onto her shoulder. He needed time to come to his senses, and the girl too. Their hearts were pounding with fear. There was not a drop of good aura emanating from the guy. In his dream, Xian felt only an all-consuming fear, the power of pure evil that awakens human fears. And there was something he just couldn't understand. That demon had his own face. Why did he call Xian his incarnation? What's going on anyway? The girl also couldn't understand what exactly had happened to the guy, so she grabbed him by the shoulders and almost screamed that he had really mocked her like that. But the guy only answered that someone told him to leave him alone and go to the meeting. With this hex, he acted like a hurt child. The girl was in no mood for jokes. She stood up and said that he had become completely insolent lately, whether she was dating Hex or someone else. It was her personal life and none of his business. But from all her words, he only heard that she had other men and began to ask about it. He stopped her and asked her to look at him. He gently moved a strand of hair from the girl's face. Xian is no longer a child, not the boy she should be taking care of. So let her not date other men, and not Hex either. But Astria only laughed loudly at this. She was wondering why he was protesting so actively. Did he really think that he and Hex were dating? If Hex hears this, he will most likely be offended, because he is an incredible and incorrigible monogamist. And he is so faithful that he remains faithful to his wife for 80 years after her death. He made something up for himself there and, angry about it, began to act up, saying that since he had grown up, he decided that there was no point in respecting the girl anymore. She was questioning him like a little child. He was alone all this time and he was probably too lonely, but let him not forget that she promised never to leave him. Rhea convinced him that she was not dating anyone at the moment, and that until she grew up, the girl was not going to date anyone. Even if she met someone, the guy was more important to her. Shen may have grown up, but he still retains the habits of a child. He ran up to Rhea and hugged her. Come to think of it, he was too narrow-minded. There was still much she couldn't do for her. And yet, let her wait a little longer. He will soon start earning money too and become even stronger. All Rhea could think about was that he seemed to be approaching puberty, judging by the fact that he still couldn't get rid of his habit of being capricious. The girl thought that the situation was more or less resolved, but the next day, Shen stood there smiling and said he thought he'd leave them alone so they could talk in peace. The table was groaning with food. No one could have expected that. Hex didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He felt creepy. The boy prepared dinner for him too. What is going on here? But Rhea would also like to know the answer to this question. Last night they had a conversation about Hex wanting to come over to their place and what the guy thought about it. But to the girl's great surprise, Xian replied with a smile that they needed to prepare for his arrival, since he himself was a close friend of Rhea. Since he is not an enemy, there is no reason to hate him. Let the girl tell him to come. Hex asked the girl if the food was poisoned, to which she replied that he should just eat and not worry. Any poison was like water to him anyway. She thought that his attitude towards Hex was, of course, a little alarming, but at least she would be able to avoid hysterics when leaving for supposed meetings with Hex, so it was even for the better. The food was very tasty. The guest was delighted, as if he hadn't tasted anything tastier in 100 years. It was getting dark outside, and the man was getting ready to leave. He finally asked Jian where he learned to cook so well, to which he replied that his mentor bought him food in famous restaurants and pastry shops, and he ate, watched, and studied. The girl was happy. It seemed like they were getting along well, at least they weren't fighting, which was already good. The guy added that if the mentor hadn't bought him food, he wouldn't even know how to bake cookies. Everything he can do is thanks to his mentor. At these words, the girl's cheeks flushed scarlet. Hex grabbed the guy in his arms and began to ruffle his hair, saying that he was saying this because Rhea couldn't cook, but how beautifully the guy covered up the teacher's shortcomings. The man winked at Xian, saying that every guy should be able to cook for his favorite mentor. Hex was about to leave, and when the girl asked if they would see each other tomorrow, the man replied that Xian had already invited him to visit tomorrow. This was the height of her surprise. Maybe her student was up to something, or maybe they really did get along. Smiling, the guy added that Hex could come every day, which would be more convenient for the mentor. She wouldn't have to leave the house unnecessarily. Finally, Rhea realized what her student had planned. It was his cunning, insidious plan to keep the girl from leaving the house. Finally, left alone, the boy came very close to the teacher and asked in a quiet, low voice if he had behaved well today. He promised that he would cook something delicious for them again tomorrow. His smile and behavior sent shivers down Rhea's spine. The girl was in despair. She wouldn't be able to complete the mind sword technique because my personality would essentially be under Jian's control. She definitely didn't want that. A few days later, Xian was in a bad mood. When she said she wanted to go somewhere, she had to clarify where. They came to a festival in the village, and such things happen on special days, so let the guy stop being capricious. The girl said that he had been working so hard lately, receiving guests, and they hadn't spent time together for a long time. Suddenly, the guy's attention was drawn to a shooting gallery where a man won a girl a plush toy. The young man asked the teacher to wait a little while and went there himself. When he returned, he was very happy. In his hand, he carried a cute black plush cat for Rhea. The girl didn't know how to react, whether to cry or laugh. Did he really think that I wanted this toy? At least he knows how old the girl is. The guy asked what was wrong with her expression, and that she probably didn't like the toy cat. The girl understood that he would probably be very upset. She hugged this black cat very tightly, like a little girl. The girl cheered up and thanked Xian. Her reaction made the guy's heart beat faster, and a blush appeared on his cheeks. She was too cute. Actually, the girl didn't bring him to this festival for this reason. Seeing what she was looking for, she grabbed the guy by the hand and pulled him aside. What she was doing embarrassed him greatly. The girl explained that the right hand should be placed on the partner's hand, and the left hand should be placed on the partner's waist. And then they danced to the music and turned around. They were a truly beautiful couple, although the guy didn't know how to dance at all. Smiling, Rhea explained that after turning, they usually stop for a bit and look at each other. And during the dance, the eyes look, the guy could right now lose consciousness from the beauty of his mentor. Everything that was happening was completely unusual for him and greatly embarrassed him. The music stopped and another one started, and instead of Rhea, her partner was some unknown girl. The guy couldn't understand what had happened, so finding Ray with his eyes, he tried to find the answer. It was a change of partners. It was a disaster. The girl was ready to kill Xian right there in front of the people. Why doesn't he dance? He danced so well with her. The girl saw that the guy wanted to be only with her. It was then that she realized that Xian had a very withdrawn character. Her original goal was to help him grow up to be a good person, to instill in him a love for humanity, and to socialize him so that he could live among people. But now, Xian's faith and impartial kindness are directed only at her. That's why she came here today, to practice his social skills. But she took it too lightly, for which she now reproached herself. Maybe socialization is too much for Xian, and maybe it's better to leave him alone for now. Suddenly, a man approached the girl and suggested that if the girl was resting because she did not have a partner, would she do him the honor of dancing with him? Meanwhile, Xian was thinking about what he should do next. He mentally cursed Rhea for why she even made him change his partner. Much to his dismay, Xian noticed Rhea standing next to another man, posing as if to ask for a dance. A bright flame of jealousy ignited within him, something that was rightfully his, and nothing and no one could take away. He left his partner and rushed like an arrow towards Rhea and the man. The guy couldn't let this happen. The holy swordswoman Astria should dance only with him and with no one else. The guy's emotions got the better of him, and he couldn't control them. He shouted that he was her partner. It was an awkward scene, though. The guy took the girl by the hand and pulled her towards him. The mentor's gaze darted behind the guy's back. There stood a lonely girl, Sion's partner, whom he abandoned. Sion knew he had disappointed his mentor. She was looking at him as if asking what he was doing, abandoning his partner. She'll probably say that who she dances with is none of his business. But to his great surprise, the girl took the guy by the hand and said with a slight smile that she already had a partner. Sion was perplexed. The man left, wishing her a good evening, and the girl began to think that this man, judging by his manner of speech, was an aristocrat, and he probably invited her to dance. I think that the girl was a commoner. And if she had refused, he could have made a scandal, accusing her of insulting him when the guy asked why she hadn't admitted that she was an aristocrat. The girl laughed that Sion didn't understand anything about romance. They came here to have fun, and if her identity was revealed here, people could have fun in peace. This is a festival that happens once a year, and today, throwing aside all worries and anxieties, they're just having fun, and Holy Swordswoman Astria doesn't want to disturb them. And they don't want to be disturbed either, the girl said, smiling cheerfully. It's days like these that make it worthwhile to communicate with new people. She still began to scold the student, asking why she left her partner and came here. Is this what she taught him? But the guy suggested that the girl take a look for herself and see everything for herself. The girl was dancing sweetly with the guy, who was also obviously happy to dance with her. The guy admitted that he was very bored because the girl was constantly making mistakes in her movements, and there was a guy there who wanted to dance with this girl, so he simply changed his partner. Rhea actually taught him manners, so he thought he handled this easily and beautifully. But he is very bad at dancing, so will the Holy Swordswoman Astria deign to teach him this? Still, Rhea really did raise him to be a well-mannered person, albeit a little capricious. That's all the social skills training will do for today. She'll teach him how to dance until he gets the hang of it. That same evening, in the banquet hall, the guests discussed what a magnificent banquet the hosts had arranged. But he thought about the fact that they call such a banquet wonderful. Isn't it just boring and tiring? This young man's name was Arenhire El Grodan. He was wondering if there was anything more interesting than this unfortunate banquet. Fortunately, or unfortunately, he heard a conversation about a dungeon in the Goldstrong mountain range, where the boss was a two-headed cyclops. Another man asked that it had been captured by the Holy Swordswoman a long time ago, and now this place was abandoned, hadn't it? According to adventurers passing by, a powerful aura can be felt from the dungeon. They say that a new, terrifying monster has appeared there, becoming the new boss. This story greatly interested the young man. Finally, something interesting. What a beautiful evening it was. Rhea thought with delight that the Lord seemed to have spent a lot of money. The beauty was indescribable. Shin picked it up, but his gaze was directed not at the sky, but at the girl. For him, she was more beautiful than all the fireworks in the world. The appearance of a new boss, it's strange that few people talk about it. It sounds really tempting and interesting, just what I need. The next morning was no different from the previous ones. Sion called the teacher, thereby distracting her from drinking tea. He said he wanted to go on a trip with Hex for a few days. This news surprised Rhea so much that she even asked again. It was unexpected, because Sion had never gone on a trip, especially with Hex. The man was glad that the boy managed to come after all. He asked with interest whether Rhea had given permission for the hunt, to which Sion responded somewhat thoughtfully. The Holy Swordswoman immediately agreed to let the young man go, surprisingly without even asking any questions. He replied to Hex that the teacher did not immediately and with difficulty agreed, which was not true. He thought that she would refuse at least once, but this did not happen. The man was worried whether the boy would really be able to hunt, since it would be his first time fighting monsters in real life. Wouldn't Rhea like anything he gave her? Not necessarily the same thing. But in response, the guy, with confidence and shining eyes, replied that he could handle everything. The girl was a little thoughtful. When she went out onto the porch, she made sure that Hex and her student had left. She could have been upset, or, on the contrary, calmly relaxed, but the girl chose to train. Spiritual training begins with meditation. It is necessary to calm the soul and mind, getting rid of useless memories and mana in your heart. The Holy Swordswoman Astria achieves perfect calm, unshakable under any circumstances. From this moment, the true training for acquiring the spirit sword begins. But a person always has suffering and weaknesses. They envelop the soul and consciousness like a vile snake, not allowing one to move and be free. captivating, forcing to go to the bottom, to forget everything that is dear and important. But it is possible to resist all this if you find balance and strength and let the light deal with this suffering. Rhea woke up with her heart beating wildly and a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. To transcend the limits of the body, to become a transcendental being, means that she now has more memories and emotions accumulated than others, but each time they interfere with her training. Memories from a past life that come suddenly attack Astria like scavengers, even during training, a creature that is inside her, but for some reason got out of control. This can't go on any longer. The girl needs to master the spiritual sword. She needs to do something about it. She decided that it was necessary to train in a familiar and safe place. She moved to a place that became her training sanctuary. At this time, the guys were hunting wild monsters. It was difficult for a newbie, and Hex, instead of rushing to help, began to worry and yell at Cian because of it. Time passed quickly, and they had already made a stop and were getting ready for dinner. Hex praised Cian's food, which was similar to the dish from the corner shop. Morning came, and the girl had not moved an inch from her spot. She continued to meditate with concentration. But today was the day of Xian's return, so she had to go back. Maybe she would still have time to clean the house. It was getting closer to night, but they still hadn't returned. The girl began to worry. Bad thoughts began to creep into her head, but the girl began to calm herself down. Hex was next to him. If he was next to her, then Cian wouldn't be harmed. They should have gone together after all, but the guy asked her for something only for the second time. And it would be wrong to interfere with him when he himself wanted to develop communication skills. Besides, he said the day before that he relied heavily on the teacher, so he would try to spend a little time with Hex. It was impossible to continue like this. Apparently, the girl would have to go and find them herself. As soon as she stepped out the door, Rhea met some guys approaching the house. Shen was very surprised, either because the girl was going somewhere or because of the expression on her face. The girl was almost crying, but she tried to hold back her tears. But Rhea's emotions changed dramatically. She started yelling at both of them, saying that since they were late, they should have warned them, and if Cian couldn't, then at least Hex could. She became even more worried because Cian's arm was injured, to which he responded, reassuring her that he was simply fighting monsters with Hex. But Cian changed the subject. He put his hand in the magic pocket, saying that he brought something for the girl. The guy, beaming with joy and smiling, handed the girl a beautifully decorated gift box. He was congratulating Rhea on her birthday. The girl was very surprised. Because she was so worried about these two, she completely forgot about her own birthday. She realized that Cian and Hex had gone on a trip to prepare a birthday present for her. The man praised the boy, placing his hand on his shoulder and calling him a real gem. Even when faced with high-level monsters, he did not flinch, and using the magic scrolls that he had, he dealt with them in an instant. The man admitted that he knew that Jian was a high-level swordsman and frankly thought that he couldn't handle it alone. But he fights so well that the man even thought about taking him on as a student. After all, Rhea had raised him well. But the girl didn't even seem to hear what Hex was saying. She seemed more thoughtful than usual. Hex finally asked why she was looking at the gift so intently, if it was really her. Did the girl really not know that it was her birthday today? Laughing awkwardly, Rhea replied that she had lived too long. Shin looked at the teacher for a long time and realized that something was wrong. Suddenly, almost shouting, he ordered that a party should be held in honor of the teacher's birthday. He was full of spirit. The guys were busy setting the table. Everything needed to be beautifully arranged and prepared. Hex asked the guy if he was going to cook something, to which Cian replied that yes, but there was little time, so it would be something simple. She tried to convince them that they didn't have to try so hard, but the men, in all seriousness, ordered her to sit quietly where she was. They would cook, and the girl should just eat everything. Rhea wondered why they were happier about her birthday than she was, although if that's what they wanted, let them do as they wish. She didn't want to admit it, but even though she felt awkward, seeing them fussing about her birthday warmed her heart. Rhea's birthday used to be a sad one, and she spent it alone. Having such a wonderful longtime friend and Cian is a real blessing. With a smile, the girl whispered to Hex to open the box. There was wine in there, to which he smiled happily. But Cian, hearing this, looked at Rhea with a cold gaze and began to scold the girl. She again did not eat anything, although he left her so much food, and she did not touch anything. Realizing the whole situation, Hex, laughing maliciously and mimicking Rhea, asked why she was apparently so lonely that she had to contact him at least once, and how a holy swordswoman could be so sentimental. For these words, Hex received a punch to the jaw. While she was screaming and beating Hex for his words, and for the fact that it irritated her that because he was a tank, the blows didn't land, and Cian was just watching them, beating Hex from them had already become commonplace for him. Finally, evening came. Hex thanked Rhea and Cian for the good wine and delicious food. Finally, he congratulated the girl on her birthday, and laughing, added that if she felt lonely, she should call Rhea, to which Rhea angrily replied that he should leave before she threw him out. Hex laughed and left. The guy and the girl were finally alone. All Cian could think about was that they hadn't been alone together for a long time. He missed those times. Everyone was tired, so Rhea, stretching and yawning, said that it was time for them to sleep too. The guy was also tired after the trip, and thanks to him, the girl admitted that she had a good dinner. But the guy asked her if she would open the gift he gave her. The girl actually completely forgot to open it. When Astria opened the beautiful box, she was surprised. She was silent for a few moments, looking at the contents in amazement. There were incredibly beautiful earrings and a hair ribbon. Sheehan explained that the earrings were made from Agrifax core, and as for the hairband, the girl had previously complained to him that her hair was in the way. And so that the girl never forgets her birthday again, the guy will remind her of it every year. He was glad, because the earrings looked even better on the girl than he imagined. But even though he said so, for Rhea the best gift in life is Sigrian. The girl was truly happy with the gift. Smiling, she promised that she would wear both with great pleasure. Finally, Rhea said goodnight to Cian. It was really late. He wished her back and headed to his room. Finally, the guy was left alone with his thoughts and heart. If he had stayed alone with the girl for a little longer, it would have become dangerous. His heart was beating very loudly. He couldn't understand when he started looking at Astria with such eyes. At first, she took care of him, and he was happy just to be near her. After all, he was no longer alone, but since when? The time spent with Rhea became so painful for him and for his aching heart. Her gentle touches sent a thrill through his heart, and this trepidation soon grew into a desire to be closer to the girl. And finally, it grew into greed. He was worried about what she was thinking about. Even when he called her to dinner, she did not answer. He protected her as much as possible, worried that she would not freeze at dawn. Her gaze was both frightening and ignited a fire of interest. But the girl replied that she simply thought that that little boy had grown into such a handsome man who even cared about others. He tried to suppress his feelings many times. Rhea is his benefactor. She gave him shelter, the wild beast. There were times when he despised himself for these impure and immature feelings and wanted to stay away from her. But he just couldn't control himself. He wanted to be close, at least to hold her hand. He wanted to walk together to their house. The further he tried to get away, the more he didn't want to move away. He definitely decided that he was not going to give up anymore because he admitted to himself that he loved Rhea. But the night is not the time of Xian, but of the evil god who despised the guy's human feelings. How can one fall in love with a person? It's just a laugh. Yes, he craved the ether of Astrea to restore his power, but he wanted to have her as a slave, not as a lover. How can his incarnation love any person? Since this has happened, there is nothing that can be done. We will have to get rid of the source of these useless thoughts. He burst into her room but immediately froze in place. The girl was getting ready to go somewhere. She calmly asked why he didn't even knock. She asked what was wrong. Why did he look like he was about to pounce? His mood quickly disappeared and he replied that nothing had happened. By the way, the girl said that he came just in time. She tried on the dress, matching it to the earrings he gave her. But Cian's reaction was very strange. Not embarrassment, but rather aggression. He walked up to the girl and poked her in the stomach with his finger, saying that her hair was somehow tied up, and he kept quiet about her clothes. It would be better to take off these clothes and never wear them again, in any case. He dryly replied that he was going to bed. The girl was left perplexed. Why did he suddenly behave so rudely? But Cian, or rather the evil god himself, did not understand what had happened and why he had blurted it out so abruptly. And why is the evil devil's heart beating so fast? This won't do. How can he feel this way towards a person? This woman did something to him. The next day, Cian couldn't remember when he had managed to change his clothes and fall asleep. And why does his whole body hurt so much, as if he slept tensely all night? In the hallway, the guy met Rhea and behaved with her as usual, which surprised the girl. After all, strange changes in his mood were happening to him. He seems to be in a good mood today. Maybe yesterday it wasn't Cian at all. The girl reflected on the fact that sometimes he spoke to her informally and sometimes informally, so she could not be sure. Rhea began to guess what was going on. Shen asked, a little embarrassed, why she didn't tie a ribbon on her hair. He started to say that if she couldn't tie it well then, but the girl interrupted him. She came too close and asked with a sly smile if he really thought she wouldn't notice. Her hand touched his cheek, and she came even closer. How could he have deceived her for so long? But the guy recoiled. He didn't understand what all this meant. Did she really know how he felt? But suddenly, Rhea asked who she was. Cian stopped understanding what was going on even more. She was talking about a girl he was secretly communicating with. Rhea continued to sweetly talk about how he had just suddenly started acting like an adult, and also suddenly decided to celebrate her birthday. Maybe he was trying to please Astria because he was afraid she would be against it, but she assured him that it was okay. She wasn't that insensitive. But the guy just laughed, saying that he didn't know what she was imagining, but it was all untrue. Then Rhea decided to finish him off by telling him that, apparently, her student had been abandoned, and that the girl knew absolutely nothing about men's hearts. She stroked his shoulder and reassured him, saying that Cian was a great guy, slim, handsome, thin, but she didn't appreciate it. Then the guy decided to ask how the teacher knew that he liked someone, to which she replied with a sly smile that she was there and saw everything. Anyway, it's because that girl has no taste, Rhea continued. Trying to avoid the conversation, Cian said something that surprised the girl a little. Although he can see everything at first glance, there is something that he does not understand even if he looks at it many times. He added that sometimes it can be so difficult and unclear, but he will never give up. Rhea thought about the fact that he had just turned 20. But why did he speak in such incomprehensible words? And yet, if even the almighty Cian himself admits that he can't do something, doesn't that make him more human? Finally, the girl cheerfully told the guy to be brave, and someday he would be able to find the answer. The girl admitted that Cian really does tie up hair well in salons, only a few people do it, and even until the night, nothing came loose. Well, the victory goes to the guy. Yesterday she really tied them too badly. Suddenly, the girl noticed a plush cat sitting peacefully on a chair, as if watching her. Rhea was scared because as soon as she noticed the toy, she would have to sleep with it so as not to feel lonely when she was alone. She hadn't even thought about giving the cat a name, but Choo Choo just came out of nowhere when the guy gave it to her. Although she told Hex and Cian that she liked the gift, it was not about the earrings but about the Agrifax core itself, which is very difficult to obtain. This stone was rare and valuable. After all, thanks to his special ability, he is able to absorb memories. Agrifax is a monster that feeds on the black ether of a person. The core of the Agrifax is valuable as a gem, but its true value is in its ability to temporarily seal some of the bad memories. It was once very popular for this reason, but the longer the absorbed memories remain in the core, the more they become distorted and worse. Because the core has a deadly side effect that returns along with the memories to whoever used it. Memories of her past life are what constantly hinder Rhea's attempts to comprehend the essence of the Mind Sword, so she temporarily sealed the memories of her past life in the core, and during this time, she tried to comprehend the essence of the Mind Sword. The maximum time for which memories can be sealed is 100 days, and it would be good to master the Sword of the Mind during this time, but the sword itself is an unfinished technique and there are too many variables in it. So she thought it was a bit of an extreme option and would only be used as a last resort. The Dark God watched as Rhea, asleep, cried and begged her father not to do this. A sad sight. He said threateningly, with a coldness in his voice, that he didn't even know that they were still going on. It seems she slept restlessly last night too. Using his powers, he ordered that these creatures disappear. These succubi were already starting to irritate him quite a bit. The way they brazenly hung around Etra and tormented her every night was getting on his nerves. His strength is slowly returning to him, but it is not enough yet. He thought that if he recharged today too, he would be able to accumulate almost all of his strength completely. But the sight of the girl crying in her sleep made the Dark God hesitate. Crystal clear tears flowed down her pale cheeks. Using magic, the Dark God decided to penetrate the girl's dream. It was necessary to solve the problem that was preventing him from regaining his strength. In Rhea's past life, this happened somewhere around the 3rd grade of elementary school. The girl was very jealous to see the dolls hanging on her friends' bags, but the parents had no intention of buying it for them. In the end, she made the wrong choice. And the retribution was too cruel, not what a child should have received as punishment. The father was furious, the veins appeared on his forehead, and he screamed that how dare she steal his money for this rubbish. Her first greed in her life was mercilessly trampled. The man had already swung to hit the girl again. But a low, eerily cold voice said, "What a disgusting sight this is. How dare this degenerate hit someone with his dirty paws?" The man's patience snapped, and he finally made it quiet. There was too much noise coming from that guy. There was no point in making a fuss over such a trifle. He used magic to fix the girl's stuffed cat. The girl loudly and joyfully said the name of Choo-Choo, her cat. She thanked her brother, but he just waved her off, dryly telling her not to cry over trifles anymore. The man was about to leave, but the girl asked his name, causing the stranger to turn around. The hood came off and he looked at her silently for several long, silent moments. "Cassian," he answered seriously, but there was no malice in his voice. Finally, Shen woke up. He was not yet fully awake, so he was not aware of where he was. His thoughts were occupied only with what to make for breakfast. But the realization that he was holding someone's hand made him wake up completely. The guy was shocked and even scared. Why was Rhea sleeping in his room and even holding his hand? Looking around, the realization of the situation hit him like a snowball. This was not his room at all. Alarm was screaming in his head. Why the hell was he sleeping in Rhea's room? But the girl's words, spoken through her sleep, made him stop for a second. It was thank you. Luckily, he got out without waking her. He almost died from excitement and his pounding heart. He seemed to be showing signs of sleepwalking. He was haunted by a familiar feeling of déjà vu, and this was not the first time he had woken up next to Rhea. He clearly remembered falling asleep in his room, but sometimes when he woke up, he found himself next to the girl, holding her hand. If this continued, how would he be able to look her in the eyes? He hoped he hadn't said anything stupid or done anything weird in his sleep. At the same time, a beautiful morning for Rhea was disturbed by a phone call, thus waking her up. She was furious. Who could have been calling non-stop since early morning? It was Hex who called, and it was because of him that the girl woke up. After joking that it was impossible to sleep for so long, he began to ask seriously whether the girl remembered that she had previously asked him to do something. She asked that her words be conveyed to Aaron's father, as it would be better to sort this out immediately. The man reported that a reply had arrived from Marquis Grodin. Hex said that the Holy Swordswoman wished to take such a student, and he happily agreed, although of course it looked more like he was begging her to take him quickly. But the man said there was one small problem. After hearing this, the girl was in complete collapse. It was very bad. The small problem was that Arenheier had disappeared. The soldiers asked the young gentleman to stop and go home already. They searched the entire mountain in search of the dungeon he spoke of, but found nothing. And a message came from the great master Hex that the Holy Swordswoman Astria wishes to make the young master her disciple. But the young man flatly refused. His decision was firm and unwavering. He would never give up. A genius of fencing, the one who will become the next holy swordsman, no matter what magnificent epithets are applied to him, Arenheier El Grodin is so beautiful that no one can resist him. The young man showered himself with praise. The men around did not understand what the young gentleman was doing, he thought, adopting an overly expressive pose. Throughout his life, he had been taught fencing by many teachers, but they all became weaker than him in the blink of an eye. So he found something more interesting. The conversation about the dungeon greatly interested him. According to adventurers passing by, a powerful aura can be felt from the dungeon. They say that a new, terrifying monster has appeared there, proclaiming itself the new boss. Still, even if Aaron were to learn from a holy swordswoman, it would be boring as hell. In that case, it would be better not to waste time. He began to say with a grin that he had his own order. First, he decided to explore the dungeon, so that was more important than the holy swordswoman. The men were simply perplexed by his words. One could say that they did not take his words seriously, considering him still an unreasonable child, but they would follow his order. Tearing Xian away from making tea, Rhea said seriously that they needed to talk. The girl dryly informed her that a student would come to her soon. She maintained an impartial expression on her face, but the guy, in turn, was very surprised, and even furious. She didn't know when exactly he would come, because after Hex's news, she was speechless, but he would definitely come sooner or later. Her new student, he is, one might say, a magnet that anyone would like. righteous, handsome, and with a good character. At least that's how he was in the original. She really hoped and asked Cian to get along with him. But the guy flared up. He didn't want to. Why should he be friends with a guy he didn't know before? They were both serious-minded, both with difficult personalities. The guy dumped her. It's up to him to decide whether to be friends with him or not, so let the girl not tell him what to do. Rhea assumed that Cian wouldn't like this news, but she still hoped that they could get along. It looked like it would be a bit difficult. She teleported to her usual training spot. She needed to distract herself from bad thoughts. It seems that after the previous boss was killed, she took his place. It's not even about Cian, but she has a particularly good feeling today, which is why she has a strong feeling that the training of the Sword of the Mind will go well. Such purity, as if all the worries and anxieties have disappeared. She felt that today was the day she had been waiting for so long. Finally, she would be able to comprehend the mass of reason. But the mood immediately soured when the girl heard a sound that was suspiciously out of place for this place. Someone unknown dared to attack the ogres who guarded this place. The guy boasted that it was not in vain that he abandoned the knights and came here alone. He had finally found the place he had been looking for so long, and he was determined to kill and destroy everyone there. But his sword met the tip of another. It was Rhea, her gaze full of coldness. But instead of fear or anger, the guy thought only about how beautiful this girl was, as if she was not from this world at all. He didn't understand why such a wonderful person was in this place, and why he was helping these monsters. Could it be that this beautiful girl is the boss of this dungeon? It was true, and he decided to kill her too, this vile monster. But the holy swordswoman Astria was more experienced and faster than him. His attacks were no obstacle to her. He didn't even see her move. He needed to drink the potion. Arin didn't understand what exactly had happened. He looked at his body in panic. There were no wounds, but he definitely felt how she wounded him. Rhea's voice was full of coldness. Not only people live on this land, various creatures live under the hand of the Creator, and monsters attack people when they invade their territory or hunt them. One cannot judge the good or evil of an enemy solely by his appearance. Even from a dry and ugly seed, a beautiful flower can grow. But the guy only thought about the fact that the girl was attacking him with a sword in its sheath. She added that this was advice from an elder, so let him listen. Who the hell was she? Since childhood, Arin was told that monsters are evil creatures that must be destroyed, even if they are so beautiful. They say there are monsters that take the form of humans. He was convinced that monsters were evil that should disappear from this world. But the girl ignored all his rude remarks. Suddenly, she threw all her weapons on the ground and said that let him try to defeat her. She even laughed that the young man thought for too long whether it was a trap and did not attack. Just as a beast instinctively recognizes the strong, so he recognizes how strong this monster is. And as always, victory will be his. But the girl's movements were faster and more precise. The young man didn't even have time to think before he received a crushing blow. Where did she get such strength from? This can't be, he lost. Arin understood that he couldn't lose consciousness, otherwise it would be the end for him, but he had no more strength left. He lost for the first time. Arin thought that he had already been killed, but he woke up and was extremely surprised. He was alive, and besides, he woke up under a blanket. Rhea said dryly that the guy hadn't woken up for so long that she was already thinking of pouring water on him. She sarcastically hinted to him that the water was there not only to pour water on him. When the young man saw his reflection, he could not immediately recognize his face. He had already started to swear at what she had done to his face, but Rhea quickly interrupted him, saying that he should be addressed formally. But it wasn't just one girl who did this, but all of them. The guy was shocked. He had never seen or heard of monsters leaving. Rhea was no longer so cold. She laughed because she had given him a good spanking with a broom for his antics. But he was interested in something else. Who she was anyway. He had never seen a boss who would make monsters clean up. The young man noticed the pattern on her sword and was stunned. It was the coat of arms of the imperial family. A sword engraved with the imperial family's coat of arms, which the emperor grants only to knights who have accomplished great deeds. In front of him is not just a monster, but a knight. But why did she act like a boss back then? No, more importantly, he made too many mistakes. To be so majestic as to receive a sword from the emperor. It was a complete disgrace. Rhea said with a sigh that the guy was really very stubborn. But she was going to spare him. Judging by his talents, the guy seems to have been experiencing apathy for a long time. But even so, she can't flaunt her strength like that. She's sure that he will feel not pure pleasure, but superiority over the weak. As she said, Aron had always been apathetic, the son of a noble family from birth, with innate beauty and outstanding talent, who had lived his life without a single defeat. He had long since felt neither the fear of failure nor the delight of achieving anything. His heart beat only to breathe, and all he could do was follow the predetermined path of genius. Although he lived a life envied by everyone, he suffered from severe apathy for a very long time. Having strayed from this path for the first time, he tried to get rid of the feeling that oppressed him. She appeared before his eyes as extraordinarily beautiful. How could he lose? The girl kindly asked if he could return home alone. She would give him a healing potion so he should return before sunset, but his hand clutched hers. He couldn't go back alone. More precisely, he got lost. When Aron took her hand, he immediately realized that he never wanted to let her go again. But for some reason there is a persistent feeling that if they separate now, he will never be able to see her again. She reminded him that the young man had mentioned earlier that he was lost. She had a teleportation scroll, let him take it and go to the nearest village, but that wasn't the point. He also had a teleportation scroll. He didn't know how to say it, but Aron, who was used to receiving such offers, made such an offer himself for the first time. She asked him what his name was, and his answer shocked her. The young man's name was Arenheier Elgroden. Even he was frightened by the girl's reaction. Arenheier, as originally described, was a man with golden hair and purple eyes, capable of charming anyone. She had only read about him in books, so she had no idea what he looked like. Could it be that this guy who seems a little out of this world is Aron? If you think about it, his appearance and abilities are not that ordinary. She should have immediately guessed that he could be the main character. Her eyes were clouded by the perfect appearance of the scoundrel Cian. When asked how she learned his nickname Aaron, the girl nervously replied that she had accidentally shortened his name out of habit. His manners had not changed, so in honor of their acquaintance, the young man kissed the girl's hand. He beamed and said that she could call him by his nickname. He would even be glad. But suddenly the girl was overcome with anxiety. In the original, Aaron also fought Astria and lost to her for the first time. Normally, the swordsman would have considered this a blow to his pride, but instead he fell in love at first sight with Astria, who was able to defeat him. He then became her apprentice, tried his best to make her open her heart to him, and trained hard. Eventually, he became the strongest swordsman in the world, but he lost her to an evil god and dedicated his life to revenge. Then she thought that his devotion was wonderful, because it did not concern her at that time. Rhea tried to calm herself down. She asked Aron why he was walking alone without a bodyguard. If his parents found out, they would worry. But he replied that he was kicked out. That's it. He ran away because he didn't want to become the holy swordswoman's disciple. So he's lying because he felt awkward meeting her here. Well, one way or another, she will get permission from the head of the family and take him straight to them. But the young man denied it. He wouldn't go home, and that was it. It's so difficult with children at that age. Aron suddenly asked if she could take him with her. In a completely ordinary tone, the girl replied that she herself wanted to offer him this. He was infinitely happy. He beamed with joy at this news. Rhea thought that he would refuse her, or maybe after his defeat he wanted to become her student. But it was still necessary to inform the parents that the young man would live with her. The thought that they would live like a real couple went to his head. Embarrassed, he begged her to ask her parents' permission first, and she was in too much of a hurry, to which the girl replied that they, on the contrary, were late with it. Aron, continuing to blush more and more, said that they were conservative people and might not understand. Rhea thought that they, on the contrary, very politely asked her to take the guy and make a man out of him. She was ready to go straight to them and tell them, but Aron, appearing very close from behind, asked with sincere incomprehension if she couldn't just take him with her. This kid really doesn't want to go home. She remembered Cian as a child. Well, everyone has their own circumstances. Nothing can be done. She will have to contact the Duke separately. Before heading home, Astria apologized to the ogre family for her training, causing their location to be exposed and them to suffer. She promised that she would return soon and take measures so that they could live in safety. Turning to the guy, she asked that since everything had already been decided, maybe they should go. He must take her hand and they teleport using the instant teleportation ring. She warned Jian in advance, but he would still be surprised to see Aron. Cian might be unhappy, but Aron, who will become a hero to everyone in the future, will likely act differently, and might even be able to get along with Cian. That's what she thought until the two started arguing from the very beginning. Aron proudly asked who he was and why he was in Astria's house. To which Sion asked the same thing, but addressed the teacher less formally. She had hoped in vain that these two would get along. She was too naive. From the very beginning, the children chosen by the good God and the evil God were incompatible, so it was not worth expecting that everything would go smoothly from the very beginning. There will obviously be many such situations, and she should be more careful. Aaron spoke rudely towards Sion so that the black-haired man would watch his words. He shouted that he was, in fact, Astria's future fiancé. Even the girl didn't expect that and shouted at him, "What nonsense is he talking about?" The guy was very surprised that the girl actually brought him here to teach him fencing. Sion couldn't understand what was going on at all. Aaron tried to understand why Astria would teach him fencing, to which she replied because she was his teacher. The last word stuck in Sion's throat. Finally, it dawned on the girl why Aaron had such a reaction. He didn't know who she was. Finally, Xian's patience snapped, and he dryly said that the guy who was supposed to be his younger brother in training. Aaron also burst into tears at his words, but directed at Astria. She had deceived him. He thought that she had brought him as a future husband and not as a student. Anyone who hones their swordsmanship would at least once like to challenge the holy swordswoman Astria to test their skills. There are plenty of them, and yet he didn't know who was in front of him. Even if she hadn't been active lately, how could he not know? She is a holy swordswoman. If you think about it, he heard about her from his father. Now he understood everything. His words finished her off even more. She was that same Astria, the holy swordswoman that the great warrior Hex had spoken of, and that was why she had brought him here to teach him fencing. And he only realized it now. It's no wonder that everything worked out so easily. It turns out she wasn't interested in him. Xian laughed loudly at his words, to blindly follow the person you like without knowing who he is, and how arrogant and self-confident you have to be to seriously think that his feelings are mutual. And after this he dares to stutter about being her future husband. The situation was getting heated. Aaron snickered that actually, when he was as good as he was, such things didn't matter. And he seems to judge a person by his background. What a mercantile approach, to which Xian replied that there is nothing wrong with wanting to know about the person you like, and besides, he does not live up to Ria's standards at all. What she really wanted to ask was how Xian knew her standards. To which the guy proudly replied that of course he knew. After all, he and Rhea had spent so many years together. She was the strongest swordsman in this world, and he thought that she would pay attention to someone weaker than herself. Shen is convinced that Aaron is weaker than him, so he is not suitable for her. The situation escalated even more. Rhea tried to calm them down, but all her efforts were in vain. There was no stopping them, they had to fight. No matter how hard Rhea tried, she couldn't do anything about these two. Before the fight starts, there are rules. When she says to stop, they will stop. This is just a sparring match to evaluate each other's skills, not a fight to the death. If they disobey, the girl will consider them both losers. In any case, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Since she sat next to two sworn enemies, a battle was inevitable. Unlike the world of ordinary people, the world of swordsmen is based on the law of the jungle, where strength rules. They have an instinct to establish hierarchy in one form or another. If this cannot be avoided, it is better to let them sort it out themselves than to interfere unnecessarily. Only in this way will they be able to get along in the future without unnecessary clashes. Aaron asked if it was possible to use real swords instead of wooden ones. But she was angry. This was not a fight to the death, but just sparring, and she had already said so. And they must fight by relying on pure swordsmanship, not mana. Aaron thought that without the sword's aura, it would be uninteresting. Instead of preparing for battle, Xian, as if on purpose, adjusted Rhea's hair. She noted that this was the first time he had fought with someone other than her. Let him not strain himself and do everything as usual. This brat really irritated Aaron. It was as if he was doing everything to spite him, even smiling. He's an irritating guy, and what did Astria see in him that she only gives advice to him and treats him so warmly? But suddenly the girl turned to him. She said his problem was that he was too confident and he needed to stay alert and give it his all. Isn't the difference in attitude too great? The young man thought. And let him be careful, even though he was cured with a potion. But she attacked him recently. Rhea approached him quietly from behind. Still, he was pleased to receive advice from her. Just a few words from her, and he had already forgotten the insult. Shen didn't like it. They were ready to start sparring, but for both of them it was a fight of honor. Aaron longed to possess Astria. If he could no longer see her beautiful face, he would burn everything to the ground. But they both had one desire and goal: to defeat this guy in order to get Astria's attention. They started the fight. Rhea watched their actions and tactics with particular attention. Both guys were furious. They were ready to fight to the end. Aaron defended himself when Cian continued to attack him brutally. For a second, fear pierced Arena, but he managed to distance himself from the enemy without allowing himself to be hit. Shin irritated him. He turned out to be better than he first thought. On the other hand, it's natural, since he studied under a holy swordswoman. Shin's eyes glistened with irritation. Aaron was convinced that only beginners were nervous in sparring, and that he was just an obstacle between him and Astria. The guy thought that Jan would attack him like last time, but it was a clever trick. Shin pressed forward, not wanting to give in to the stranger. Aaron hoped that he would be able to land this blow with force, but he lost. He didn't understand. Cian was definitely his age, so where did he get such strength from? And Cian was cheerful. His opponent was laughing so loudly, and now he even had a nosebleed. This mockery really got him into a rage. He was ready to actually kill Jian. But Rhea, who had been watching them for a long time, intervened. She firmly concluded that Cian won the sparring match. Aaron was upset. The one who had never lost to anyone lost twice. But Astria came to his consolation, and with a gentle gesture began to wipe the blood from his nose. The guy began to claim that he could have defeated him if Astria had not stopped him. He would have shown himself better. But she calmly replied that if they had had real swords instead of wooden ones, did he think that everything would have ended the same way? If these were real swords, Aaron's nose would have been cut off by now. Rhea calmly explained that for a swordsman, composure is a lifeline. No matter who the enemy is, one must never let down one's guard. Today he lost because of his arrogance. Finally, instead of arguing, Aaron thanked the teacher for the valuable lesson. Both the girl and Cian were very surprised when he called her teacher. The girl praised him for learning the lesson right away and not repeating the mistakes in the future. He quietly said that his heart was pounding wildly, but the girl heard it. Yes, he lost, he was just scolded, and the guy was upset, but just one smile from her made his soul feel so good. Laughing, she replied that this was entirely possible, since after all, it was the first time he had suffered a defeat. But Aaron only thought that if there had ever been someone who had moved his heart so much before, perhaps he would never be able to defeat Astria. But his sweet thoughts were interrupted. Something cold washed over his head. Shan laughed cheekily that such a fuss was caused by some nosebleed and whether Aaron had enough potion. Aaron was just going to accept defeat and forget about it, but after another stunt like this? Never. They were fighting like cats and dogs again. Rhea then made it clear that she had not stopped their duel because she wanted each of them to realize their current level of skill, and not so that they can fight as they please. She shouted at them that if they behaved like that again, she would punish them very severely. Aaron was sure they were being punished because of this guy. What a shame. Even his father hadn't punished him like that. Even a slight touch of elbows could have sparked another argument between them. Rhea couldn't take it anymore. Anyone else would have already collapsed from cardiac arrest from her scream. She made it clear to Aaron that Cian was his senior, so he should show respect. She turned to the second one, saying that if he was the eldest, he should set an example and not recklessly pour the potion on him. Cian started to snap back that he was just helping because he looked injured, but Rhea yelled at him again. The girl scolded him, asking what was wrong with him. Of course, she understood that he didn't like the current situation. She asked him how long he would continue to treat the uninvited guest like this. Shin couldn't stand it when Rhea talked to him like he was a child. It was irritating, and Aaron could clearly see his reaction to it. Finally, in a cold tone, she said that while she was preparing dinner, Cian should show Aaron to his room. The girl looked at Cian with such a cold gaze that he definitely shouldn't have contradicted her. He dryly motioned to the guy to follow him. Maybe she was too hasty after all. From the very beginning, according to the original plot, conflict between these two children is inevitable. But even if so, they don't have to fight to the death if they were destined to meet anyway. She thought to change their fate by arranging a meeting under more favorable conditions and not under worse ones. The elder showed the room, indicating that the younger would live here, and also that he should change his clothes for dinner. The clothes were just right. Shin waited for him silently, with a serious look outside the door. This guy, although he looks slender, is actually quite strong, Aaron concluded. But the way he dryly threw words at Aaron was very irritating. But then Aaron, turning to the elder, said that they needed to talk. Finally, dinner was ready and Rhea was calm. The girl immediately noticed that Sian was not in the mood. But now was not the time to ask, so she would ask later. The younger one began to praise Ria's cooking with admiration, but the girl interrupted him, replying that she had not cooked it. He was shocked that this guy had prepared all this food. He didn't really want to eat what Jan cooked, but the food smelled and looked too delicious. Finally, Aaron expressed a desire to eat what the teacher had prepared later. The girl thought that she shouldn't undermine her authority, so she replied that she doesn't cook much, but it's a secret why. Even this simple answer made the younger man's heart skip a beat. While they were chatting pleasantly, Sian did not utter a word the entire time and did not touch his food. The guy, getting up from the table, said dryly that he had no appetite and would go to his room. The girl immediately rushed after him to find out what had happened, but she was stopped. Aaron honestly admitted that he didn't want to let her go, because if he did, she would follow him. Ria replied dryly that yes, it would work, and what difference did it make? But Aaron, in response to this, made a sweet face and began to beg not to leave him. But he didn't succeed and apologized. He must have hurt Sian's feelings a lot when he came. But since the teacher told him to get along with her, he would try his best. In return, could she stay with him at least for now? She will stay with him for a little while. The guy thought that Ria must think he was weird. But not knowing how he feels, Ria makes him watch as she and the brat amicably eat the food he cooked. His conversation with Aaron completely infuriated him. He said that maybe this suited him, but Aaron did not want to be content with just the role of a student. His feelings for Astria are real. So if Sian isn't confident enough to confront him openly, then let him stop interfering and just quietly continue playing the student. How is it that this is there in Ria's place of rest? Ria is his mistress, and he is a tamed beast, living, begging for her love. But suddenly an uninvited guest burst into their world, and immediately he began to demonstrate such a frank desire to possess her. Unlike him, who constantly tries to hide it, he hid his feelings so carefully because he was afraid that Ria might hate him after all the efforts he had made to win her affection. He is scared. Her smile, addressed only to him. Those short moments they spent alone. Even the place next to her, which was only his, he was afraid that all this would be taken away from him. Shin is terrified that she may no longer need him. Ria entered the room. If this continues, and she will leave him then. But when asked if he was sick, the guy answered that he was. That's it. Now he's at peace. At least now Ria still cares for him. The guy said that he was fine, but why did she get up? He thought that she would stay next to him. The girl wondered if he was really okay, and that it didn't look like he was. She was next to him for literally 3 seconds. The boy addressed the teacher by name. He asked why she brought another student. Wasn't one of them enough? Didn't she need him anymore? Ria could never have expected these words from him. Shin admitted that he thought maybe he wasn't enough, so she brought another student. Astria had expected Sian to be upset when she brought Aaron without warning. Shin still seems to be afraid of being abandoned by her. She was very sorry that she had brought another student without asking him. She apologized for that. Let him not misunderstand her. She did not bring Aaron because Sian was not enough for her. She will never abandon him. But the guy didn't want to listen. Where did such confidence come from? They weren't related by blood. He was just a stranger to her. He's right. They're not related. But Ria confidently said that she considers him her only family. He is the person she cherishes more than anything in the world. In response, the guy simply hugged her. He also cannot imagine the world without Ria. Quietly, barely audibly, he confessed, he loves her. She had once been in a similar situation. Then she hesitated with her answer. This child is the one who will one day kill her and lead the world to destruction. So when she first brought Xian, the girl swore that she would get rid of him any moment he woke up. She was sure of it, but what a cruel irony. Xian called her name with love. He gave her long-forgotten happiness and allowed her to feel family love. Whoever this child is, whoever he or she becomes in the future, Xian is the family she chose of her own free will. Therefore, she cannot do anything that could harm the guy. The girl also quietly said that she loved him too. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Not long before, when Ria got angry at him and looked at him with an icy gaze. Then, when he poured the potion on Aaron, he was in shock. She, who didn't get angry even when he was rude to Hex. I got angry because of some guy I saw for the first time today. He seriously wanted to ask her something. She will never leave him, will she? He knows that the girl values him, but nevertheless, he cannot get rid of the worry that one day she will leave. That's why he wants to make sure he asked her to tell the truth. But Ria was shocked. He's not a child, why such questions? Honestly, it was ridiculous, but so cute that she almost burst out laughing. After clearing her throat, she told him not to worry. She will never leave him in her life. The guy, like a little child, asked to repeat it again, to which the girl agreed. Then he asked in all seriousness what about the wedding. She couldn't understand why the topic of conversation suddenly switched to the wedding. It seems like something similar even happened recently earlier. Sian was in a panic just because she got close to Hex. And today, Aaron appeared and attacked her with such a sudden confession that Sian was worried that Aaron would push him out and he would be left on the sidelines. In that case, he needs to explain everything clearly. Sian will never give in to Aaron, and he can trust her completely, so she clearly and confidently said that she has no thoughts about marriage. But these words killed the guy. Rhea didn't understand why he had such a reaction. Wasn't that the answer he wanted to hear? Then maybe she at least has thoughts about a relationship. But the girl didn't really think about relationships either. Although she has not been in a relationship yet, the girl probably will not date anyone in the future either. The same Hex with his scenes did not interest Rhea at all with such confessions and proposals. Her romance had long since dried up before this base thirst for conquest. But poor Sian, he probably thinks she'll leave him for Aaron. Then, trying to calm him down, the girl said that maybe one day she would love someone, but it would definitely not be Aaron. The next time Aaron mentions her as his fiancé, let Sian say this. Swordmaster Astria loves humble and kind men who are also good cooks. That is, people like Sian. How treacherous is the human heart. One word makes one freeze, while another brings hope back. Sian admitted that Aaron was indeed a tiresome guy, but he helped him understand something, the fact that Rhea likes men like him. She added this so that he would not lose heart because of Aaron, but not only did he perk up, but he also joked so cheekily with the girl. Yes, he is a real impudent fellow. The girl laughingly noted that her student had gained impudence from Hex. He heard everything. His calm was unshakable, but he was on guard. She is in danger. We need to check if she is safe. The next day, a male voice called out to the girl in the morning. It was Aaron, asking if the teacher had slept well. But suddenly his look became too serious. What is he doing? He admitted that yesterday he didn't have the time to say it, but he loves the teacher. In the original legendary sword, Aaron, in order to avenge his beloved teacher, dedicated himself to revenge by sacrificing himself, and was depicted as a romantic hero who defeated a great evil. However, in the beginning, before he was consumed by the desire for revenge, his love for his teacher Astria was also strong and was more like an obsession. Astria appears in the original only 40 pages, but he confessed his love to her for 20 whole times. The girl, pulling her hand back, said that she would tell him directly. She doesn't see him as anyone other than a student. Rhea wanted to continue, but he interrupted her dryly. He didn't care. Because in the future he will try harder to make sure she doesn't see him as just a student. He frightened the girl. His eyes were already half crazy. But help came very quickly. It was Sian, who announced that he had made meatballs and asked if Rhea could try them. He was a savior. Aaron was furious. He shouted that the teacher had spoken to him. But the guy saw everything perfectly well, so what? Sian asked if there was not enough salt. A delicious meatball would have ended up in the girl's mouth any minute now. But, flying up like a bird of prey, Aaron stole it. Having said that there wasn't enough salt, the guy left, and Sian loudly cursed at him. At breakfast, the elder ordered the younger to wash the dishes, to which he began to complain. Astria, in order to pacify him, calmly said that since he had become her student, he should cast aside his sense of superiority. She didn't know how it was in other places, but in her house all students were equal. The girl is also an aristocrat, so it's not that she doesn't understand Arena in her youth, she also thought the same way as the boy. Sian continued her thought seriously. The point is to give up your aristocratic privileges and remember your position as a student swordsman. Only by renouncing arrogance and finding humility in learning can you pave the way to fencing mastery. The girl was pleased with her student. She added that Aaron should not think about shirking his household chores, since she was also doing them. Even though they bicker constantly, it seems like they'll get along somehow. 2 weeks passed, and the screams in the house were back to normal. Aaron was yelling that Sian was deliberately splashing water on him when he was cleaning. To which Sian dryly replied that it was a mistake, and besides, he always had to wash his dishes. It was a mistake. Rhea needed to stop them before it was too late. But suddenly, a vibration was felt from the spatial pocket in which the communication crystal lay. Who could it be? The girl answered with interest. Having heard her interlocutor, she was very glad. Astria looked so happy that even the guys noticed. The girl was beaming with happiness. She was asking how her interlocutor was doing and his health. But suddenly, quite abruptly, Ria became gloomier than a thundercloud. She asked again what her interlocutor had just said. "No, this can't be. He will come here."